No, I think my earpiece. Welcome to Punchline Africa TV, the program Frontline Africa. My name is Mwenda Mbijiwe, and I'm glad to host you today. We are broadcasting live from Nairobi and London. For comments and opinions, please follow us on the Twitter handle on the screen and the numbers scrolling at the bottom of your screen. I'm joined today by a very important man, very efficient security consultant in Kenya and the region. I have known him for a number of years, and he's trained and worked with big security companies and also government agencies on security. And today, he's going to be our guest. His name is Dennis Nthumbi. Please, those from Kenya, differentiate. It's not Dennis Itumbi. It is Dennis Nthumbi. There's a difference between the two men. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sambiju.
This week, we marked 3 years after the unfortunate Westgate terrorist attack.
Correct.
In which almost 70 people died.
Yes.
And property worth millions of dollars destroyed.
Correct.
And a business shut down for over 2 years.
Correct, yes.
About a year ago, they reopened. But reflecting on Westgate in the wake of terrorism, what have you been going through this week, and what have you been thinking about the whole scenario and what it did to you as a person and to us as a nation?
I think, you know, one of the things that we have to reflect on is the objective of the terrorists. And for me, one of the things that I'm really, really happy about is that we haven't had the over-publicity, you know, in the media houses in regards to, you know, the gory images that we saw at Westgate. But I think the question that I always reflect is, have we been terrorized in what has happened after Westgate? And the question is yes. Have they been able to get into our minds as what it is their target is? And I say yes. Have we learned anything, you know, anything from the Westgate episode? Perhaps not, but have we made any changes? Yes, we have tried to improve as much as possible. So I think for me it's really reflecting in terms of, and for me the take home would be, have we learned lessons from the Westgate attack?
On that very day, 3 years ago,
yes,
I remember it was a Saturday.
Correct.
About midday.
Yes.
Where were you? What were you doing? And how did that particular day transform your life as a security consultant?
In fact, for me, that day I was managing and I was directing the largest security exercise in Kenya. And that was a Safaricom Sevens, where we had 120,000 people congregated at Kasarani. And when Westgate was hit, we had a pretty good plan that was put in place with government agencies and all that. And I remember when Westgate was hit, the first response was shut down the event. But it's not possible to shut down an event where you have 120,000 people. So, but the best thing, and I thank God for this, the best thing is that we were extremely ready for an episode of that nature. We had done our risk assessments, we had done, you know, our proper security planning and everything of the sort, and we had properly structured. But we had over 10,000 people who were still gaining access to the venue, who could have been, you know, any soft targets. So when Westgate was hit, we went into practically a crisis mode. We went into a crisis mode. And we reworked our security just to make sure, and we closely followed Westgate thereabout, but there was a lot of panic from the organizers. Should we shut down? Should we do what? But I remember I knelt down and said, and told God save us. But we had done our plans, you know. And, you know, I know there was an attempt basically also to gain entry to Kasarani because, you know, we found some abandoned weapons somewhere in thereabout. But the event ended safely. But for me, it was one of my most trying moments in my security practice, whereby you have 120,000 people. You know, you're looking after them, and there's a bad scenario that happens somewhere. You have no idea whether you're next or not. But we finished well, and even the next day, we continued with that exercise. And the following weekend, we had again the Standard Chartered Marathon, which covers 3/4 of Nairobi. So the conversation was whether should we go ahead or not. But we went ahead and we said, look, we can't cancel anything because of terrorists. if they come, God will put them in our hands and we'll deal with them.
Wow,
Yes.
that is very impressive.
Yes.
Because now I didn't know you were behind the event at Kasarani.
I was, and
But
actually
my
interesting
first
is that, yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
the interesting thing is that part of the team that we had done training with, and these are guys part of the community at Parklands and Gigiri area, are the civilians that responded to it. And those guys are highly skilled. Technically, even if the police force failed, those civilians would have taken the terrorists head on. And that for me is a capability that I appreciate. That as a practicing civilian expert, then I have expertise which will be of great gain to this country.
In my assessment,
Yes.
Westgate ended up being the most embarrassing security or insecurity response
Correct.
that we saw from our security forces.
Yes.
That is from, the attack happened at 12 o'clock.
Correct.
But from about 4 hours later to when it ended 4 days later,
Correct.
there was a very poor response.
Yes.
But from the moment of the attack to about 2 hours later, the civilians you mentioned,
Yes.
the people that live in around Westgate area,
Correct.
responded correctly,
Yes.
responded appropriately.
Yes.
One gentleman, he said, ran over to go and rescue his brother and ended up rescuing so many people,
Correct.
including a little girl
Absolutely.
whose image was all over the world, flashed from Westgate.
Yes, absolutely.
Are we saying today that the level of participation of the citizenry
Yes.
in even responding to disaster
Yes.
is wanting both in Kenya and most nations in Africa?
The level of response for
Citizenry,
citizen.
the common man,
Yes.
how we respond to terrorist attacks.
Yes.
Are we responding appropriately? Are we equipped appropriately? Seemed like the team you had in Kasarani had
Yes.
somewhat trained the people in
Yes.
Parklands area.
Yes.
What's your
And
comparison
I think
here?
for me, my take is that, we must equip citizens to be the first line of response.
Yes.
If you look at the amendment in America which enables civilians to carry arms, is that because if there's any attack or any terrorist incident, the first line of response basically is the citizen. The police cannot be everywhere and anywhere. The percentage of security agencies in the country is about 10% to its population of the people. But people are always there and they're always everywhere. So if you enable a community to be able to take charge and hold, restrain that incident from escalating, then you have time for the police force to respond. And I think for me, one of the things that we haven't done very well as a country is to harness civilian capability in responding to security incidents or security circumstances. We have attempted to do Nyumba Kumi. We are somewhere, we're almost about somewhere 2%. We have to harness and equip the citizen to be able to take to handle this sort of situation.
Talking about Nyumba Kumi, it was born shortly after Westgate.
Yes.
And I think it's one project that didn't take off for a long time.
Yes.
And now taking off slowly. Would I say slowly and surely or slowly? This Nyumba Kumi thing,
Yes.
how can we make it more effective so that we have citizenry participation in national security?
Correct. I think it starts with building a relationship. The government has to bridge and to be seen as it loves its people and it's working for the interests of the people. Currently, there are some communities that assume government agencies to be the aggressors, partly because of mentions of corruption, mentions of the fact that justice is not dispensed properly. There's need for us to build that cohesive relationship with the communities. Right. And the president saying that security starts with you. And people retorted. They were like, how dare you say that when it's up to the government to protect us? But that's not quite true. Mbijiwe, you're home, you're the one who can protect. If you relegate that position to the police, then you're not functioning as a man should be. So we also have to educate, because one of our biggest problems that we have is ignorance towards safety and security as our people. We have to sensitize our people, we have to develop awareness level, we have to train, we have to capacitate that it is our responsibility as this country, as a citizen of this country, to first secure your family unit, then your community, and by and large work with the government to make sure that you make the government able to respond. And it's interesting to know that these terrorists don't live in isolation.
Yes.
They live in our homes.
In our homes.
Believe me, in your community you've seen funny activities, but you don't want to see. You understand? Perhaps some of these guys want to benefit from acts of terrorism, or even in any fine acts of crime. You buy stolen phones. You do what? You encourage crime and you encourage terrorism. You understand? You don't vet the people who rent your houses. You don't investigate properly. You don't do due diligence to the people who hire your vehicles. You're promoting and you're becoming an ally to terrorism. So it's important that the citizen take that responsibility to make sure the first line of defense in this country is myself. And I have to take full responsibility for anybody who injures us. Of course, the state, we have delegated the responsibility of carrying, defending us in terms of, high-velocity weapons or whatever it is. But for us, even giving information to the police...
Is part of the system.
Is part of the system, should be part of the system, yes.
Maybe my last question on the West Kit before we go to bigger issues in the region.
Yes.
So I know there was a quick response from one of the police special forces called the Wrecking Squad.
Yes.
But immediately there was another one from the military special forces.
Correct.
There seems to have been a confusion of command and control.
Correct.
And what ensued ended up being the most shaming security attempt, or rather rescue attempt.
Yes.
Maybe in the history of this republic and the region.
Correct.
And it in the schools of history of security, that will be given as an example of our worst response or the wrong response to a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
What exactly happened, and how much do we know and how much don't we?
I think the question is, did we have the capability to deal with the terrorists? We'll say yes. Did we have the concept and the command and control structure? No. And I think that's where we went wrong. We don't have a proper, and we didn't, I think, let me just speak within the space of the West Kit of that particular time, is that we actually haven't practiced properly as a nation on how to respond to various of these scenarios. And, even if you look at the kind of weapons that our security agencies carry, these are high-velocity weapons within urban centers. So, if there's an issue within urban centers, you obviously have civilian casualties and all that because of, high-caliber weapons and thereabout. But I think what happens really is the issue of concept and the issue of command control. It seems like there are many agencies running operations at the same time without a point of coordination. We didn't have a proper control room whereby they agree. And I think initially it arose to the point of they didn't know whether it was a robbery attack or a terrorist attack. And the agencies went into a panic mode, throwing everything possible. Sort of a thug comes into your house, you want to use anything in your hands, including the banana, So, and I think, you didn't decide whether should I kick the guy or shout or use the banana, but you use both.
Or bite him.
Or bite him. So you bite, you throw the banana, you throw the hot water, basically I think to try and calm the situation, but we aggravated it because our forces came against each other and all that, and it's embarrassing to us as a nation, but I know we've learned as a nation. But for me, the desirable thing is the response time between when an incident arises and when special forces arise on the scene. And I think for us, even if you look at recent attacks, we still have a lapse in terms of the response time that we respond. We've never done it anywhere to less than 2 hours. It's almost getting worse. We have the capacity to deal with any enemy. You understand? But the capability and the concept perhaps is what is an issue.
In counterterrorism, there's something they call failure of imagination.
Yes.
Would you say that response time, our failure to improve on it, it's always, like you said, in fact, 2 hours is, you're being so kind.
Correct.
We're talking about 5 hours.
5 hours, 8
Even
hours.
the recent Kapenguria incident,
it's 8 hours.
It was, long, yes, after 5 hours.
Correct. Yes.
Are you saying, as a nation and as the region, as African nations, are the terrorists one step ahead of us? They are thinking faster than us, and we are suffering the failure of imagination syndrome?
Absolutely. The enemy is always ahead of you, and unless you mind the intelligence before them, you're not able to know how they will hit you. The advantage is that you have to draw up almost about several scenarios, up to 200, and think ahead. You just have to imagine, as you see. I think the capability to imagine how the enemy will hit you is that we also have the syndrome of dealing with the incident that has happened and planning around an incident that happened. Instead of, doing proper forecast and imagining, these guys have hit us like this. What is the other scenario that they'll use the next time? So we're almost caught, almost flat foot in terms of imagining. I mean, we are seeing the current trend in terms of where they're going, They're sort of abandon now civilian attacks. They're going to, to attack the forces. They are sort of agitating for the guys who are fighting them. So what is next? Which other of our institutions, government institutions or installations are vulnerable? Have we gone ahead? Have we even dealt with the current issue? So, we are. I think failure to imagine is a proper term that you've used. It's proper technology.
Well, if you look at Africa, the regions of ECOWAS, African nations in the west of Africa,
correct.
We're talking of Nigeria, Mali. These are nations that have been severely affected by terrorism. If you come to the East Africa and the IGAD nations,
correct.
We have Somalia, which is almost knee-deep into terrorism.
Yes.
We have Kenya affected by the spillover from Somalia.
Correct.
Are we saying that these regions are culpable to terrorist attacks? Is it because there are laws that maybe are weak there, or why are these regions? And interestingly, the southern of Africa, from Tanzania going down, is no terrorism there.
Correct, yes.
What are some of the issues that we need to identify in our study and in our quest to deal with terrorism in Africa that has to do with the spread of terrorism in certain regions and failure of the same in other regions and in the same continent?
Yeah, I think, you need to ask, why are terrorists interested in some nations and not other nations? What is so special about the nations that are being hit and not so special about the other nations that are not being hit? Because it's not like the other guys are doing anything that much more special than the rest who are not doing. And I think for us, it lies on, I think for me, typically it lies where we are in terms of politics in Africa and in terms of special interests in Africa. Terrorism doesn't just happen for a particular reason. There's deep questions that we really, really need to ask ourselves. But again, if you look at the focus, and the other day I was talking to a politician, I said, politicians are so deep in politicking that they forgot the key things that they're supposed to do. You understand?
Yes.
And we have a myriad of problems with the countries that are being had. For example, why are terrorists so interested in Kenya and not other nations just within us?
Yes.
Why are they interested so much in Somalia and not other nations? Within us, because we hold special interest within the region, and thereabout. But I think, again, we have some deep issues, some deep-rooted issues, politically.
Could this, while you're
Yes.
at deep issues,
Yes.
could this therefore mean that failed and fragile states and governments
Yes.
in those regions is actually the climate, the foster environment that terrorism needs or has required to drive on, and maybe in Kenya found that, and maybe Nigeria found that,
Yes.
maybe in Mali found that. Could these nations be on the trend to what we call failed states, or?
If we do a fragility assessment in those nations, and we look at
What did you call it again?
Fragility assessment.
Fragility
How
assessment.
fragile the nation is, either politically or resource-wise and thereabout. I'm sure we're going to find a problem in there. And you're very right in terms of saying terrorism thrives within a certain climate and within a certain environment. And unfortunately, it's the host nation that creates that kind of environment. We need to ask ourselves very, very pertinent questions. And Mbijiwe, we need to be very honest about ourselves in terms of where we are politically, where we are resource-wise, and where we want to go as a nation. And I always sometimes attribute to the climate of terrorism being dealt with by, institutions like the parliament. If parliament sat down properly, and decided we are doing these specific laws, and they dispense the laws to whoever who policies the laws, and that body decides to act on those laws specifically, and we deal with aspects of corruption, because how do those guys gain entry into the country? It's through corrupt officers,
Yes.
people who harbor them and all that. You have to create a certain environment for a virus or a bacteria
To thrive.
to thrive.
In Uganda,
Yes.
the last terrorism attack I ever heard of was
Yes.
during the World Cup
World Cup, yes.
in 2010,
2010, it was 2010, yes.
June 2010.
Yes.
Ever since, there is not a single terrorism attack
Correct.
in Uganda.
Yes.
The same has happened in nations like Ethiopia.
Correct.
In fact, Ethiopian Somalis are more than the Somalis in Kenya.
Correct.
Why is it that terrorism has found a haven in Kenya
Yes.
and not in Uganda and Ethiopia? Could there be a failure of, say, intelligence sharing in the regions? Does Uganda know something that Ethiopia knows and Kenya doesn't know? Could this be also a problem of networking of the intelligence communities?
I think we know everything that we ought to know. And you know, Kenya, the intelligence, agency is pretty well ranked, I think regionally and globally. We know everything we ought to know.
Yep.
The fact is that, you know, if you have information, Mbijiwe, it depends on how timely and how well you act on that information.
Correct.
But it also, depends on who exactly is dispensing that information. Are they using it for personal gain or national gain? You understand? And we know some guys have made policing, for commerce and all that. And I said it's the environment. But you know, if you look at the environment that Uganda operates in, the environment that Ethiopia operates in, I got into Ethiopia and I was followed from the first day I came to the last day I went.
As a security
Technically,
consultant.
and as a security consultant,
They
my
should
passport
have
reads
known you're a security consultant.
No, my passport reads
You
consultant.
pose no security
But
threat
believe
to them.
me, I feel like I'm in an island when I'm in Ethiopia, because those guys, they look at me everywhere. You know, they literally make you feel like their eyes that are watching you. You understand? If you look at Uganda, the community itself is the first line of defense when it comes to terrorism. They will not harbor any terrorist within them. They won't. It's not possible. The police have such an easy time. And the intelligence is well done. But for us, it's the community here that fosters those people. Some communities, and we have embraced some wrong doctrines. You know, if you look at some type of hardcore Islamism, you know, Wahhabism and all that, you understand? And the uptake of mosques, some young generation embracing that back in the coastline, you understand? Believe me, the community knows who is who. The police knows who is who. Sometimes our law doesn't allow us to act if you don't have proper evidence.
Correct.
You understand? And sometimes we have to resort to some cruel means to secure Kenya. You understand? Yeah. We have to make sure that our law is vengeful.
Did you say cruel means?
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, as a Christian, the Bible says, whoever who lives by the sword dies by it.
By the sword.
There's no apologies. There's no reason why we should harbor anybody who is killing people. As a security analyst, I believe that, and I can say it on air. You understand? If somebody is planning to kill people, you should just dispense him before he does that. We should really review our laws and be very honest about protection of life, and we should be pro-life. We shouldn't. Why would we sit and wait for an incident to happen? And of course, I'm sure the law enforcers have, over time, diffused pretty many attacks. But it should be clear that within our land, we don't welcome people who don't value life. And we should be very unapologetic about it.
I wish you could have put a disclaimer on that statement, that this view does not represent the view of Punchline. Dear viewer, we will take a short break, and when we return, I will have our security consultant take us deeper onto issues that have to do with intelligence sharing, with cooperation between and among the African nations, and particularly look at what the AU and the African nations are particularly doing to combat the source of terrorism that is emerging from Somalia. Please follow us on the Twitter handle, send us your comments, send us your views, follow us on Facebook, and please call the numbers that are scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We will be right back. Please don't change the channel. Hear you. Unajua ile mara ya mwisho I couldn't hear when we were starting. Yes, I can. Please usizime hiyo fan. Ama
Kidneys of the
inasumbua.
king. Miguna.
Oh,
yeah.
Start, okay. So that's fine. We try to keep it simple so we don't fry ourselves here. CRMs.
Ama wewe ndio umeweka hii. Oh, kwanza is for men.
This is well on for men.
Men
It's a new brand.
Itakausha lips zetu. You know the lips of a man are not supposed to be. Hii itakausha. Ama it was made for Southern Sudanese guys. Why would there be Vaseline for? Yeah, Vaseline for men is not good.
No, it's
It reminds me of that.
yeah.